I just want people to know that your political identity is not what is important or interesting about you. What's important and interesting about you is what you can create in your life and your own unique perspective about the world. All right, hello friends. Today is the day. I am currently recording the 1 year Q&A episode. Yeah, I've been doing Red House for a full year now. Glad about that. I heard from people that, persistence and just continuing to chug away and try to follow your schedule and stuff was kind of the important thing to do. And I'm glad that I've been able to make Red House a big priority in my life, and I've made decisions to minimize other things, to go away from, I don't know, more financially beneficial endeavors, to make sure that I was still continuing to do this. And so that feels cool, I guess. It feels good to have taken this seriously. And I've made so many new relationships with people, made a lot of new friends and stuff. And I don't know, it just feels like an all around really positive thing. So as I mentioned, I opened up a Q&A to people. This turned out different than I expected. Some questions were a lot more personal or random, and then some were about the podcast, which I think is what I was kind of picturing. But it's whatever you want to do. It doesn't, I just didn't know what to expect exactly. I've never really done anything like this. So anyway, thank you for those of you who participated. Thanks for participating. So I guess I'm just going to go down the list and answer questions as I got them, in the order that I got them. The first one already is a good example of what to expect from some of these. The first question is, what are you doing this weekend? I don't know whether to answer that for the weekend that I was asked it or this weekend. Today's Monday, so the weekend is kind of far away right now. Usually on weekends, I either work for different organizations and then podcast on Sundays, or I might have Friday or Saturday to myself, and then I will maybe play around with some songs, or if I'm lucky, have a show, or do creative projects around the house, and then Sunday do a podcast. Sundays is typically when I podcast, so a big part of my weekend is that. And sometimes Saturdays is also prepping the podcast that's going to come out on the following Monday. So that's part of the routine as well. What's your favorite book? Obviously, for a lot of people, and those who have listened to the podcast might have picked up that Christianity was a big part of my life and has been a big part of my life. And honestly, just the Bible as a collection is truly significant and important to me. It is. I find it really fascinating and unending in its vast depth of it's this gigantic mystery that I really like to try to have an eye on occasionally, and understand the different contexts that these books came from. I also love The Prophet. So this tattoo is from the cover of The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. It is a work of sort of poetic. It's very poetic, but it's not structured poetry. It is very rooted in Eastern philosophy and a philosophy of balance between two powers, and a sort of maybe not a middle road, but a balance. Yeah, just simply that, a balance between two significant forces. And it's also a story, and it's one of the most published book pieces of poetry in existence. It's an iconic book, and it changed the way I saw things. I read it when I was in my 20s, and it just stuck with me. There's a power about that book that it really gives you a reason to think about trying to see the world from this perspective of two forces being good instead of one. And I think in Western society, especially, we fixate on like one path, and we often don't try to pursue the two-headed path. And I think the two-headed path, I mean, that's what I really strive to pursue, and I think the two-headed path has a lot of power to it. Like seeing the benefits in joy and sorrow, seeing the benefits of like togetherness and separation, like these forces that must be attached. That's been very informative to me. Another great book, the Rules for Life books are great. The 12 Rules for Life and 12 More Rules for Life are, I find them absolutely fantastic. Like, just love Wheels on Fire by Levon Helm, or about Levon Helm. That's The Prophet, the Bible, Wheels on Fire, 12 Rules, and 12 More Rules. That's 5. That's probably good. Worst food you've ever eaten? The only time I remember ever reacting really viscerally and with nausea was the first time I ever had. I really like sushi, and I really like the rolled kind, but the first time I ever had the kind that was like a piece of raw fish with just like rice underneath it, I didn't respond positively to that. That wasn't pleasant. Also when I was a kid, I think I ate a pecan pie or something, and that made me sick as well. Those aren't good answers, though. I honestly am not that adventurous with food sometimes. It takes me a while. Now, at this stage in my life, I'm a lot more prone to just eat anything and be fine with it and not be put off by unusual things. But in a lot of the time in my life, I've not been the most adventurous with food, so I just like haven't tried things if I thought they were too gross to try. Weirdest food? Probably a mealworm. I think that's what they're called. Let me see. Yeah, so some kids in middle school dared me to eat a mealworm one time, and I tried not to eat it. I tried to just like hide it in my lip, but they could see it, and then I actually did eat it. So that's probably the weirdest thing, I guess, and grossest. Worst and best episode from the podcast. If I think back on the first 5 especially, I just didn't, I wasn't, it took me a while to get comfortable with this process and with talking to people. So not for any reason in particular, my guests were solid. I mean, especially like the first episode I had Andy Tennille on, and it was awesome. And he has a really interesting story, and I wish now that I had known how to navigate it better and ask like to hear more about his story, because his story is so different from most people's, and he has this like glimpse into the life of Tom Petty and other people that I should have asked about more, but I don't know. I was distracted by how it feels to do something so uncomfortable, or at least that's what it was at the time. It was uncomfortable. So some of the old episodes, I guess I just wish I could go back and improve upon. But best episodes? That's really hard. I can't name a number one. Jonathan Green is an episode that stands out that I really enjoyed, because I really enjoy how I seem to relate to people is through disagreement and through like trying to pursue the difficult task of coming to an agreement even though you don't see things eye to eye. And Jonathan Green and I feel like did that together gracefully, because we saw things pretty much in opposite directions, but we, like that was a space we shared, and like we played that game, I thought, nicely. And that's what I love. That really is how I feel bonded to people, if we can play that game. So that episode was really fun for me. There's episodes like that where like I feel like the conversation is truly a really good like kind of ping pong match where it goes back and forth. There's episodes like with all the musicians that I've had on, pretty much, all the songwriters. I mean, I love the songwriter episodes because I just relate to those people, in a totally different way. When I have on Caleb Cottle or Kyle, or I know I've had on hella songwriters like Sam Foster and Will Easter. I don't want to like leave people out and come across like some kind of asshole. I would like to, there's no reason I need to have this stuff memorized, I guess. Jeffrey Dean Foster, yeah, Doug Davis, having on Casey Noel, Cash Valley Morrison, Rebecca Todd, like people like that is fun because it's like talking shop. It's like if you're, I don't know, it's like comedians talking to comedians instead of comedians talking to Larry King. It's like they speak the same language. And if I'm putting out an episode, because I know some musicians that listen to this podcast, and if I know that they're listening to it and hearing a language that they understand, that's kind of exciting for me, I guess. I like all those, and I like them that get weird and unexpected. I feel like the one with Rebecca Todd got really weird and unexpected, and I really liked that one. And she's a great just performer in everything she does. So, yeah, okay. I think that answers that question. Last dude I texted, I wrote down at the time that at the time that I was asked that question, the answer was Sean, my old boss at a job I worked until recently. Now the answer appears to be my neighbor, Johnny, because I got him a cookie that I would like to deliver to him. So I wanted to see if he was home. Who is your best friend? I have a lot of really close friends. My cousin Caleb goes back to the first year of my life. We've always been really close. One of my oldest friends in the world is Matthew Alivedo from The Genuine. Some people might know him as, but he and I went to middle school together and lived in the same neighborhood, and I pretty much learned how to like rollerblade and skateboard and fight and cuss and all that stuff with Matt Alivedo. And then of course two of my closest friends now as an adult would be my old bandmates Kike and John, and I got another good friend named Zach. I've got all these friends. Amanda is a good friend of mine. So I don't know, best friend, it depends on the metric you use. Alan is a close friend of mine too. Depends on the metric you use. Kike and John I just have like a different kind of bond with than most folks. I got lots of friends, but closest ones, that's probably the ones that I listed. Middle school crush. Ugh. I had lots of those. Middle school? Good Lord. I've always just been kind of a romantic mess. And so I've always, like in school, I always had crushes on multiple girls. It wasn't like I had one. It was like I'd have one little girlfriend, but I would be like thinking like, oh, there's other ones I should line up in case this one goes south in the next week. And I wouldn't want to name any of those people. That's just fucking embarrassing. Top 3 concerts ever. That's a good one. Top 3 concerts ever. Okay, so first I should mention, I think I mentioned this in a podcast with Casey Noel. I typically only see people like one time. After that, I feel like the elation of the whole thing goes away. Other people don't feel this way, and it's fine. But for me, if I see somebody more than once, it just starts to like decline. Like the first time I saw the Avett Brothers was amazing for me, but then like I saw them 2 or 3 or whatever, maybe 4 more times, and it just, by then I was like, man, I'm kind of like bored with this. I've seen this show. I'm not shocked when the song I know starts to play or whatever. It's just kind of a one and done for me. One of the most intense experiences I think I had as a music goer. I came to know about Father John Misty when he released I Love You Honey Bear, and I wasn't into his first album yet. I hadn't really heard his first album yet. I was only like totally immersing myself in I Love You Honey Bear. And I went and saw him with a friend of mine in Raleigh, and it was probably the last big show I went to and got like ground seats or like floor it was standing room or whatever, but probably the last big concert I ever stood in the crowd of like tons and tons of 20-year-olds and just had this like religious experience. And his show was so bizarre because he all of a sudden was doing a Q&A with the audience with the lights up, and he like somebody was getting in a fight and he threw some kind of like Freud quote at them, which I heard later was, he put in every show. He's such a bizarre performer anyway. So that was I had so much enthusiasm going into it anyway. So that was awesome. The most high energy show was definitely, I saw Old Crow Medicine Show at Legends in Boone in like 2009 with a bunch of friends, and it was off the fucking chain. They were fucking crazy. They were crazy. The whole room was crazy, and they were still smaller. I feel like the bubbling of them was just starting, and Willie Watson was in the band, and God, it was good. And yeah, the whole place was just like a beehive, just moving and buzzing. People thinking that they were thinking they were. It was weird. It was like redneck. It was like hillbilly mosh pits. It was like hoedown mosh pits. It was amazing. And it said 3, so I'm supposed to pick one more. Other shows I've seen are Brooks and Dunn with Reba McEntire. I've seen a bunch of gospel acts. I've seen tons of independent musicians. Tons and tons. I've seen Iron and Wine, and that was great. I've seen the Carolina Chocolate Drops, and that was great. But honestly, if we're talking epic... I saw Ray LaMontagne at a theater in Raleigh, like an opera house, and that was pretty amazing. But yeah, I mean, I hate to say it. I kind of hate to say it, but I saw Tim McGraw and Faith Hill in probably 2007 or 8, and that's one of the. I don't think I've seen a higher budget show than that. Like it was like massive, and big light show. The whole stage was a light show, just fucking wild, and wild how much money goes into those shows, and they just the theatrics of it all. I guess that added to the experience. So I'd have to put that one on there, I guess. All right, this one's strange. Red flags for a girl. I don't want to sound any kind of way, but I don't think I don't think I have red flags that apply strictly to women that wouldn't apply to like more broadly in relationships. I mean, I suppose there are some things that are gender specific, but red flags for a girl. I thought about this for a while. I think one is definitely this. I'll say this right out. I'll preface it with this. I'll introduce it with this. When someone's ideology is so traditional, for example, if a man's ideology is so traditional that he says shit like women ought to be in the kitchen, then we would all agree that that's nonsense and silly and just like antiquated and old-fashioned and not necessary. And I think that there is an adverse to that as well. I think if somebody, particularly on the female side, if they're so sort of like in a I don't know if they would call themselves progressive or feminist or whatever, but if somebody harbors resentment, I think toward males, that's definitely a bad sign. And I think if I would not want to find myself in a relationship where I was expected to like say, put men at the butt of all jokes or talk about men like they're this nuisance in society, or that male power equals misogyny, or all these things like anti-male sentiments. If those are expressed, I think that's bad. I think that's just that's somebody not really acknowledging the fact that like there's a double standard being expressed. I think I've seen this a lot, I guess, like I think women, like, they're, it's a pendulum swing. And I think women sometimes, they find that thing, just like I did with atheism, where I left Christianity and I found this identity that was antithetical to Christianity, so I went hard against Christianity for a while, and then like kind of found more a language that really was more honest toward Christianity, is where I am now. I think that happens with the sort of progressive anti-male stuff sometimes. Like, people find a liberating identity through something like feminism, and they just like swing in this way that makes them express things toward males that are almost like anti-male, and then I suppose they come back as time goes on, as people grow into their identities a little bit more fully, But that happens. So that's one. I think anybody, male or female, who's like, I'll say it like this: anybody who is male or female, who are deeply devoted as an identity to an ideology, that tends to be what I think of that as a red flag for a human being, because I just think that is a block, an obstacle that it's best to try to get over. And one day I hope that I can put that into better words and explain this theory or whatever a little better. This is like a torch being carried on by many, many people from many other thinkers about what individuality is. And I really do think that individuality is super important and crucial to a healthy state of mind. And I think when I've found myself, I don't know, maybe in relationships where somebody was just so ideological that they could not express their own ideas, that they just expressed the same things that anybody else would say with that ideology, that is a red flag for any kind of person, I think. Not as like they're evil or they're stupid or anything like that, but it's just, when you want, in my view, what you want out of a relationship is you want someone's maximum capacity to be on the table, not like constantly accessed, but you want all of someone's wisdom, all of someone's potential, all of someone's like bravery to be accessible. And if you got somebody who's like, oh, I was raised liberal, or I was raised Christian, so I just like refuse to let go of those ideas no matter what, then you're dealing with somebody who like is stuck in a certain receptive perspective in their life. And I personally have found that it like is hard to get that person to embrace new ideas or embrace new identities or new possibilities, because they sometimes cling so passionately to, or cling so desperately to an identity that is from the past and that they inherited. And so that can limit things. That can make things kind of hard. I like doing things in threes. So if I can think of one more red flag, I guess it would be, there's this really shitty thing in life, it seems, that sometimes people don't want to grow up per se. And it depends on what you mean by grow up as to whether or not that's a good idea or a bad idea. There's a passion for life and an intrigue and a mystery and a bliss that you can maintain in life, this childlike sort of perspective where you don't get jaded and you don't get cruel and stuff. And I think artists sometimes are really great at keeping that as a part of who they are, because they play. If they're doing art correctly, according to some people, then they're playing like a kid. That's a cool version of youth and of like spark of innocence or whatever to keep alive. But there's this other version of it. I particularly see it in men who are running around nowadays spouting off communist, sentiments. Women too. People who are running around talking like they're supposed to be um, intellectual because they use the word communism and bourgeoisie and sees the means and nonsense like that. And those people, what I really hear those people saying is that they're kind of I see those people as like kind of pitching a temper tantrum. And I think when you see an adult pitch a temper tantrum, that's pretty gross. It's pretty weird. And I think that those people are in this thing where they really don't want to accept the harsh reality of life, that like it is unideal, that we're going to die, that resources are limited, that like life comes with struggle, life comes with burdens, and that there's no way around that. I think that these people like to dream up a world where there are ways around that. Like we can imagine the ideal society, but if your ideals are that you can get rid of suffering in life, I think that that's incorrect, and I think it actually comes from a childish wish. So that would be my three red flags: would be ideology, refusal to become an adult, refusal to accept the full scope of what life consists of, and also like identity based, in group based hatred for people outside of that group, particularly men. And being anti male, I think, is a horrible sign. Do you feel like different versions of yourself depending on the season? 100% I do. Yeah, October is a time of year that I, for some reason, have a very romantic idea of, and it leads us into winter. And I think other people probably experience it the same way, and maybe I perceive mine differently, or I just think that mine is special. Maybe we all do this, but um, I get really busy and creative and stuff as fall approaches and hits. That's when I'm like really wanting to be creative and do, I don't know, just do more stuff. I think of fall as almost like the start of the year or something. It's like, oh, I'm leading. I don't know. Businesses have like fiscal years. I think of fall as like the first quarter of my intellectual year or something like that. It's like when I start anew. Then winter is great and loose and hanging with family and kind of like waiting, anticipating that warmth, but also just like meditating on that cold, that like those dreary, sad vibes and those dark mornings. I get as sad as everybody else does in wintertime. Spring, yeah, I usually get. If you've ever seen that video of the cows who get to run out in the pasture for the first time in spring, I experience that as well. I just get this rush, this like rush of positivity the first day that it's warm and I wear a t-shirt or something. I just kind of freak out. Or some days I go walk around in the yard and look at the dogwoods. And then summer's just fucking crazy. I used to hate summer. I used to like never want to be outside, but over the last 2 years, I've spent a lot of them out. I've spent a lot of summer outdoors, and it's changed me entirely. I fucking love being outdoors in the summertime and like hearing the bugs and doing the things and having the garden and whatever. I've come to love summertime a lot. You ever think about having teleportation capability? I literally never think about that. I just never ever think about that. Maybe one time I did, but I don't think about it very much. You lit? You lit? Um, I don't know what that means exactly. Do you even like school? I don't know who asked these weird questions, but thanks. Do I even like school? No, I didn't, and I don't now. What's a conversation that surprised you? Example, one you never would have expected to have. I don't know if there's any that fit that criteria, honestly. One that I never would have expected to have. Well, I guess The episode with the other Tyler Nail was pretty unexpected, just because I've never talked to another Tyler Nail before. So that was fun, and he was a super cool guy. That was cool. Um, everyone, not everyone, but a lot of people tell me things I don't expect. When Sam Foster told me he was a pilot or had his pilot license at one point or still does, that surprised me. When the songwriter from Asheville told me that it didn't make her sad to think of humans going extinct, that was definitely an interesting conversation. Valerie Miller. That was a interesting piece of the conversation to wrap my head around, I think. One thing that's weird about so much of this stuff is like people have these, in some cases, not all the time. Like my friend, I just saw a picture of my friend Trey. Our conversation was not like this, where he wasn't shocked to like hear counter ideas, but sometimes when I talk to people and they just say these things, these opinions that they think are just, they say them as if they're facts, and that's very confusing to me. Nobody talks about their opinions as if they're opinions. People talk about their opinions as if they are facts, and then when they're challenged, there's this wow moment that's like, huh, like what the fuck are we doing? Like, why are you challenging what I said or whatever? And I've experienced that in some episodes, and I guess that can be a little surprising. How many hours of sleep last night? Last night, like most nights, was probably about 7.5. Sometimes it's 7. Sometimes it's 6.5 or something like that if it's a worse night. But usually I aim for 7 or 7.5, somewhere around there. Sometimes the full 8, you know. But I'm often interrupted in the middle of the night. I'll wake up, or I will set an early alarm and wake up a couple of times. So I guess I'm not getting the full 7.5 like in order. Breakfast. It used to vary a lot more. Nowadays, I'm trying to do strictly. Right now, I'm on this this high protein and fat thing that I'm trying out. I'm trying to get away from using as many carbs in meals regularly. So usually, or it used to be that I would eat eggs and toast a lot of the time. I'm trying to switch to like eggs and bacon or just eggs. Today I had just eggs. Ideal breakfast would just be everything. Would be like scrambled eggs. Some people have different feelings about this, but maybe I would choose a waffle. Maybe I would choose a pancake. I'll let you decide. Just something to receive syrup with. 2 pieces of toast with some jelly on it too, with some bacon on the side, man, and some potatoes, like some friggin' hash browns, like the shredded looking kind, not the. I don't care so much for the cubes or the big ones. I want the shredded ones, like at Waffle House. So I'd rock with that. A little tiny glass of orange juice or something, and then like maybe a taste of cereal, something real sweet. That'd be a decent breakfast, I think, a great one. But of course, number one breakfast item is a Pop-Tart. Some of you don't know, but for my friends, for people in my life, I had a birthday. I've had two Pop-Tart fests where people just bring a shit ton of Pop-Tarts over to my house, and we just taste different Pop-Tarts. We can toast them, we cannot toast them. People will do different takes on Pop-Tarts. I made ravioli, which a guy I used to work with referred to as savory Pop-Tarts one time, and I couldn't forget it. Pop-Tarts are a great thing, and they're underrated. Will you do a retrospective of best guests Q&As? I think I would if the show was more seasonal. So I guess why that doesn't work is like like when like on reality TV shows on A&E or TLC or whatever the fuck channel they come on. They'll have those season wrap-ups or whatever, but I don't do seasons for Red House. I just do them every week. So like if I like the most popular episode on YouTube is Tucker Tharp. If I had Tucker over, seems like it would make more sense to just do a brand new episode than it would to talk about the last one. Because that was just one conversation among many, and I plan on talking to Tucker many more times, and everybody, tons of other people that I have on the podcast too. I'd like to talk to more than once. So I think looking back on previous episodes, probably not this style, but definitely having guests on again. You have good style. You have good style. If it was asked as a question, I would say not particularly. If it was a compliment, then I appreciate that. I don't always feel as though I do have good style, but I am trying to I'm trying to appreciate clothes more, I think. That's what it is, because clothes are like a goddamn work of art, and sometimes the more creativity you can insert into every aspect of your life, I think the better, the more ownership you can take over certain things. And I don't know why I found it was like it was put into my head at some point that prioritizing the creativity of clothing was feminine or lame or unnecessary or self-serving, or I don't know what the hell, but I would like to add to my sense of style. But whoever thinks that mine is good, then thanks very much. Your favorite part of your body? My favorite part of my body. I like my brain. Sometimes thinking the way I do can be a bit isolating, because I was thinking about this the other day, what terms I live in. And I'm always like trying to not sign up for something that's going to make me wrong about something. That's like part of the whole ideology thing that I have, is that if you sign up for an ideology, you insist upon a certain statement of truth. But many statements of truth can often be wrong. It's really hard to say things in a true way. My brain, the way I see the world sometimes, doesn't help me relate to people, because I find myself disagreeing with so many people, and I'm always like isolating myself and kind of being like, no, I gotta think the way I think, not think the way they think. But despite all that, I guess it's what I find most interesting about myself, is being able to, I don't know, think through things the way that I try to, and be creative the way that I try to be, and shit like that. There's plenty of things I would change about my just like whatever physical appearance, just like everybody who's self-conscious would do. But it's fine. I'm fine with how I am. Most surprising or unexpected takeaway from podcast. This is like almost a disappointing takeaway. It is sometimes so much more interesting to talk to. God, this sounds so judgmental and mean-spirited in a way, but it's just true, man. We are at a point in music right now, I really believe we're at a point in music where creativity is only in it's only in lyrics. And no, that's not true. In the music that I'm most in, and like the more traditional forms of music, there's people doing wacky, crazy, creative shit in music, and they're just in a different world. But in my world, I feel like there's a lot of stagnation, a lot of people just trying to be other people, or just trying to they just look up to other people, and so they're just trying to be like those people. And I find that disappointing, because the whole point of art, in my view, is to make an artistic display, like a creative craft out of your own experience, and learn how to voice it in a unique way. Uniqueness is the heart of art, I think. And the uniqueness in my world is lacking. And I have found that has been the case in conversations with some musicians, those that are in my world sometimes. they just think the same shit that like a lot of other people think, and their uniqueness is a little harder to find. But I talk to like fucking chefs or entrepreneurs or painters or whatever, and their uniqueness, though, actually, in a lot of those are in traditional art forms, so including visual arts, I think they're guilty of the same shit musicians are. But in this other side of creativity, like entrepreneurship, that's where I see a lot of individuation and a lot of uniqueness and a lot of like attractive qualities in people. People really seeing room for something and filling that void and doing it in an interesting way. So I guess one sad takeaway from the podcast so far is that I feel as though there's a lot more interesting, unique, attractive spirit in other places right now than in like traditional art forms, particularly in our community. But that's just my pessimistic attitude showing through, I guess. Personality or looks? Looks sure are important, man. That they can't not be a thing, you know. But it depends on it depends on the length of time you're talking about. So if you're talking about the span of one day, then looks can indeed just be all that matters, because you don't have to deal with a personality. A personality is bearable for one day, but a difference in values, a difference in perspective, an absolute shit show of a personality, you can't bear that beyond, like, for the sake of someone's looks, especially because we're gonna get older and we're gonna like age out of looks, you know, and then what are you left with? You're left with personality and love. And it's a lot harder to love someone whose personality you hate than it is somebody whose personality you love. Favorite food? I've been a real sucker for pizza forever, like every male, and I can't get off the stuff, man. Just can't get off the stuff. I haven't had pizza in a long time. I haven't had pizza in a couple weeks because of the things I'm experimenting with. But I love steak. I love a good steak. I love salmon. I love Japanese. I love fried chicken, man. Like, I mean, God, you put a piece of fried chicken in front, it's hard to choose anything else above that. Like, when you got a goddamn Jesus Christ, a buffalo chicken pizza from Mellow Mushroom with bacon on it, Jesus Christ, that motherfucker's good. Cuban food I love. Mexican food I love. I love a lot of food, man. And I love sweets too. Would you say yes if I asked you out and then there was an initial? And I don't know who posted that. You know, so I just don't even know what the answer is. You know, there's always a chance. There's always a chance. I don't know. You can give it a try. Have you done drugs? Yes. So the app that I used, I feel like it might have catfished me a little bit to try to get me to to interact with the app more or some shit. I don't know, but like after the link was already off of Instagram and stuff, I got a question that was, "Are you judgmental?" And I think that the clear answer to that is yes. I'm obviously judgmental. Well, a friend of mine, I remember, had sent me a question, and I guess I didn't write it down, but had asked me about sort of like about a comment about talking about certain things on the podcast, or like what I could or couldn't talk about or whatever. And so I'm going to comment on that and then wrap it up. So look, here's I guess the way I'll phrase that is something like, what do I find myself concerned with or afraid to talk about on the podcast or something? And what I worry about is that I know where I'm coming from. I know what my intent is, and I know how much effort I've put into understanding my own perspective and stuff. And what I've experienced many, many times is as soon as I offer a challenge to a perspective, that all of a sudden I get accused of being something that I'm not. And then it turns from me, instead of me being able to explain where I'm coming from, I find myself defending myself against accusations. And that's kind of what happens on Twitter and with cancel culture and stuff. Instead of people saying, tell us what you think, they say, this is what you are, this is what you are, this is what you are, and it rattles people and it makes them whatever. That's just as I anticipate saying something, because I'm making my words and my opinions public to my community, I can anticipate somebody coming at me over something and being like, you said this, so you're this. Like in this Q&A, you said that, it's a red flag if a woman doesn't like men, so you're a misogynist. And I used to experience this in the other way around. I remember like when just by not expressing like emphatic, just by not expressing enthusiastic support for like a conservative, like a Republican politician, someone kind of calling me a liberal and acting like I must be some kind of communist or whatever. I'm not on the far ends of either spectrum, and neither are most people that I know. But most people that I know are afraid to talk about certain things in public groups. I asked that question publicly to the audience on Instagram, like, are you afraid to talk to anybody about anything? Only one person, and he's like, of course it would be him, who said no, but only one person out of everybody who responded to that said that they weren't. Everybody else said that they were. I believe, anyway, if I'm remembering right. I really, truly believe in my heart that our community is being pathologized to the point where they just feel this moral pressure to be, look, man, to be liberal, to be a liberal activist. And I don't think people realize what that means or what that's at the cost of. I don't think people are comfortable admitting that there is a version of conservatism that you are supposed to have in you, that is like appropriate for you to have in you. You're like, going back to the idea of balance. According to some people, the way to be yourself is to acknowledge that you have liberal tendencies and conservative tendencies. You might be more one than the other or something, but you have both of these potentials in you, and that you need to reconcile with both of them. You need to be friends with both of them so that you understand them both, so you're cooperating with them both. And what I see most people want to do instead is kind of say, no, I'm going to just 100% be the conservative identity. Or no, I'm going to be 100% the liberal identity. Whatever they say, especially the liberal side, because that seems to be the cool thing. That seems to be the cool group, the one that is like most sort of self-assured. What I hope to do is give people a language, offer people the space to witness language that encourages them to not be one or the other thing, to not be wholeheartedly convinced that you're wholeheartedly like the liberal identity or the conservative identity, and instead choose to be the identity of yourself and not give to these movements of thought. That's what I worry about putting out, because I know it will be misunderstood by people on either side of the extremes, particularly the left. Like, the left are the people right now in my world who are the most aggressive about this idea that like it's not appropriate to be conservative. I'm not offering this to encourage people to be conservatives. I'm just trying to tell people, hey, there's a different way to be liberal, and it's a way that includes the ability to be honest about life and about what conservatives are and what they want. And if I talk shit about liberalism, I hope that you don't feel like I'm talking shit about you, because That's not what my interest is. I can talk shit about your belief system without it being about you. And that's what I'm trying to do. This has been the 1 year episode. This year, we're changing some shit up. The conversations might get a little bit more on the nose. I hope they'll get better. I hope that you'll be more involved in them. We're going to start doing this weekly t-shirt release that's going to be ridiculous and over the top. And, it's no big deal. It's just a way to collect some stuff if you want to. But I doubt anybody will do that very much. But, it's just something fun to do for me, to mark the occasions more clearly or something like that. For those of you who have subscribed to the YouTube channel, who listen on Spotify, who interact with me on Instagram or answer the questions, I just want to say thanks. This has been one of my first creative endeavors that is like this, and it puts me this much on display and stuff, and it's just a very different thing. So anyway, I'm glad to be able to share this space with you, and I'm glad that you guys are here with me. So part of the reason I'm doing this is one, to draw more attention to the arts and to our community, and second might be to help to try to get people to let go of those political identities, because we just don't fucking need them. And if there was one good thing that came from this podcast and from these conversations, I think it's I just want people to know that your political identity is not what is important or interesting about you. What's important and interesting about you is what you can create in your life and your own unique perspective about the world. And so I would encourage you to continue to sharpen that and find it and express it so that other people can experience it. That's what Red House is all about. That's what I'm all about. So thank you guys for 1 year. Hope to see you in another year where we can be doing something similar to this, celebrating in a different way. Thank you.